Okay. I've got it ready, but we don't open with it.
Correct.
Then we'll be here in 5.
Okay. Let me turn off that doorbell too. It's annoying.
It is. I was about to turn it off, but you feel free.
I don't hear nothing.
Nope, because you are not co-hosted to hear it.
Um,
Hey, Heather.
okay, I'm going to mute everybody and you will be able to unmute at the appropriate time. How's that? Okay, Trish, go.
And for our readers, please be close to your microphone and read slowly when we get to your parts. And good evening, everyone. Welcome to our bi-monthly Foundations meeting of the Lewisburg Primary Purpose Big Book Study Group. We are glad you are here. My name is Trish and I am an alcoholic.
And good evening, family. My name is Jamie, and I am a very grateful recovered alcoholic and glad to have all of you with us tonight. And I'm going to put it in the screen right in front of your face. And for those of you who would like, please join us in the set-aside prayer. Set-aside prayer. God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself. The 12th step, the big books, the meetings, my disease. But most especially, God, please set aside everything I think I know about you so that I may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please let me see the truth.
And our preamble, Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
In the Lewisburg Primary Purpose Big Book Study Group mission statement: to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous through our group, to carry the message of the Big Book to the treated and untreated alcoholics, to help them find the spiritual solution outlined in our basic text and join the first 100 and to become recovered. There is no cure for alcoholism, but we can become recovered with the AA Big Book and 1940s style Big Book sponsorship. That is the purpose of this group. May you join us on the road of happy destiny. And before we start, I want to say something. For those of you who have never been to a Foundations meeting, and these have been around for a while now, this type of meeting originated from the Dallas Fort Worth Primary Purpose Big Book Study Group. And it is a journey through the 12 steps, focusing primarily on step 1. Here's where it's really good. How many of us, when we first got to Alcoholics Anonymous, did not know what to expect out of those people? They were really weird and they were saying some really strange stuff. Well, this will help explain a lot of that. For those of us who work with others and sponsor others, this gives us some great hot spots in the book to take others to help them understand, 1, what alcoholism is, 2, what we can do about our alcoholism, and 3, how to carry this message to others. So it's a great meeting. I hope that you will enjoy it. It'll be with our readers. It'll take Trish and I and our 2 readers about 45 minutes to go through this, and then we will be open for questions, observations, spiritual experiences, whatever you want to lay on us. So that's how we do it. And Trish, go ahead. It is yours. And Paula and Gandalf, you guys can go ahead and unmute, and we will give you the instruction of where to read as we go along. How's that? Thank you for being of service tonight.
Always happy to be of service.
So from the preface, Because this book has become the basic text for our society and has helped such large numbers of alcoholic men and women to recovery, there exists strong sentiment against any radical changes being made in it. Therefore, the first portion of this volume, describing the AA recovery program, has been left largely untouched.
Sorry, momentary delay there. We want them to know what alcoholism is, what the solution is, and how to take the action that is necessary to avoid death or insanity by drinking. For example, how to get from the problem to the solution.
Now, and Donald, I'm going to go with you first.
I'm ready.
Now, anyone who's following along with a book, now turn to the forward to the first edition, which is page XIII, and was first published in 1939, and was introduced by stating, Donald, please read that first paragraph.
Donald Alcoholic. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. And besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all.
Thank you. And now, Paula, could you reread that first line, please?
We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body.
Thank you. That first sentence tells us who authored the basic text for Alcoholics Anonymous.
And this is where it gets fun, folks, because now you got four of us segueing back and forth. So, you know, if your brain is on confused mode, we're going to dial it up for you a little bit. Gandalf, would you please read the second line?
Sure. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book.
The second sentence tells us why they went to the trouble to publish the basic text.
Hey, Paula, read the third line, please.
For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary.
That third sentence suggests the big book is all we will ever need to be successful in sobriety.
Brother Tim, good to see you. To catch you up to where we are in the forward to the first edition at the very beginning of the book, and we're going to do a segue back and forth through a whole bunch of parts in the book. So we'll give everybody plenty of time. So let's see. I'm at the fourth and fifth, right? So Gandalf Pickle the Red, read the fourth and fifth lines, please. We think.
We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person.
So the fourth and fifth sentences tell us that the big book is also written for those who care about us.
And Paula, the sixth line, please.
And besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all.
Thank you very much. That sixth sentence is supported by the fact that the big book has given birth to over 200 anonymous fellowships that have nothing to do with drinking.
And some of this stuff you guys won't be able to find in your books, but we'll let you know where and when. Our Roman numeral pages are taken from our fourth edition, if that's what you happen to be working out of. If you're working out of a third edition tonight, whatever page number we give you will be one page back because Roman numeral pages change. So, from page XIV, if you want to try and find that, and this is original manuscript stuff. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. traditions 3 and 5. We have lost our understanding of honest by the time we decide to come to AA, so that the requirement has been eliminated. But if a person is serious about living sober, they better have an honest desire to stop drinking and be willing to follow the directions in the Big Book.
And this forward to the second edition. It gives us a historical account of the first 20 years of our history. How Bill found Dr. Bob. How they got busy looking for other alcoholics to try to help. How their success attracted the attention of some of our leading citizens. How we received some very favorable publicity, the Jack Alexander's article. How the onslaught of new prospects forced Bill to develop the traditions. And then we hammer out the statement on page XX.
Of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapses, and among the remainder who stayed on with AA showed great improvement. Other thousands came to a few AA meetings and at first decided they didn't want the program. But great numbers of these, about 2 out of 3, began to return as time passed. So about 75% plus got sober and remained that way. And this is worth a mention. In the early 1940s, the Cleveland groups were running at a 92% success rate due to using Big Book sponsorship.
And Bill published the 12 and 12 in 1953. And by 1965, our success rate had dropped to 50%. Unfortunately, many newcomers are encouraged to try to use the 12 and 12 as their source of directions. Bill was the principal author of the 12 and 12, and the sole author. Bill was the principal author of the Big Book, and the sole author of the 12 and 12. On page 7 of the 12 and 12, Bill stated, "The book, Alcoholics Anonymous, became the basic text of the fellowship, and it still is. This present volume proposes to broaden and deepen the understanding of the 12 steps as first written in the earlier work." By saying this, Bill indicates that the directions for the 12 steps are only in the Big Book, not in the 12 and 12.
Madam Chair, with your permission, I'd like to make an amendment to part of that. It is page 17 that Bill stated that, not page 7.
I was going to say, because page 17 is still on the table of contents.
Yeah, absolutely. Then in the late 60s, we started discussion participation meetings that failed to stick with our singleness of purpose. So by 1980, we had dropped to 33%. The result of which was we started ignoring the practice of focusing on our solution, and we drifted into group therapy. For recent years, our success rate has decreased to what appears to be less than 5% for those finding as much as 5 years of sobriety.
While there has been a dramatic change in our fellowship, the program has remained unchanged. Consequently, the 4th edition reads the same as the 1st edition.
So let's go ahead and fast forward to page 30 and give everybody a second to be there. And Donald, I'm going to take it to you. It is going to be page 30, middle paragraph, 2 sentences, starting with "We learned."
All right, we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost self that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery.
Thank you. In our heart of hearts, we must know that we are victims of a killer disease before we can begin recovery.
And Paula, we're going to jump to the doctor's opinion. So I'll give you a minute to get there, and you're going to page XXVII in the 4th edition.
So instead of Back to the Future, we're jumping back to the past?
Yes.
Okay, I think I've got it, Trish.
Okay, and you're going to read the first 2 full paragraphs as where it says "the doctor writes."
Okay. The subject presented in this book seems to me to be of paramount importance to those afflicted with alcoholic addiction. I say this after many years' experience as medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. We identify who Dr. Silkworth was and how he wound up at Towns Hospital, how his opinion opened the door for recovery. Until we understand a problem, we cannot find a solution. I use an example of walking out to my car, putting the key in the ignition, and the damn thing won't start. Problem. I can sit on my butt and talk about the car not starting until hell freezes over, but that will get me nowhere. I look under the hood and I see the battery cable is corroded. I know what the problem is. So the solution becomes very evident. I need a new battery cable, but that still doesn't solve my problem. I still must take the action necessary to obtain a new cable, replace the bad one, and now I'm on my way. Understand the problem, know what the solution is, and then take the action to make the solution a reality.
So now we're going to turn one page over. And Donald, from the first paragraph on page XXVIII, you present the allergy, which makes us powerless over alcohol. And please read the first full sentence that starts with "we believe."
We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to the class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker.
The phenomenon of craving, which is the manifestation of the allergy.
And Paula, we are going to go to the last paragraph on that page, same page, XXVIII, or for you pirates in the audience, RRR, where we find the initial information regarding the unmanageability. The alcoholic mind cannot distinguish the truth from the false. Would you read that whole paragraph starting with men and women, please?
Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, the phenomenon of craving develops. They pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery.
Excellent, thank you. We carefully dissect the whole paragraph. First, what is the effect alcoholic men and women get from drinking alcohol?
Why is it so important that we have this spiritual event occur in our lives? Well, Dr. Silkworth said that we drink essentially because we like the effect produced by alcohol. What is the effect an alcoholic gets from drinking? When we alcoholics had a few drinks, we were amazed at the change in the way we thought and the way we felt. A few drinks produced an entire psychic change.
Now, we're going to have some fun, folks. A little bit of confusing fun here. Let's go to page 83, and we are going to go to the 9th step promises. And boy, howdy, are we going to do them in a totally different fashion than normal. We are going to read each promise as we start it by saying, when I had a few drinks, and then read the line behind it. Read each line in the first person in the past tense. For example, the first promise would be, when I had a few drinks, I was amazed before I was halfway through. So, Paula, we're going to kick it off with you. Would you please read the second promise, starting it with when I had a few drinks?
When I had a few drinks, I was going to know a new freedom and a new happiness.
Did you?
I sure did.
And Gandalf, you get the next one.
And when I had a few drinks, I would not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it.
Did you ever come out of a blackout in a place you hadn't planned on visiting with people you hadn't planned on being with and learned you had done some things you sure wish you hadn't done? Because of the guilt and remorse, it was to be a secret. And then go into a bar, have a few drinks, and tell some poor stranger the whole story.
I certainly did.
And Paula, the next one, please.
When I had a few drinks, I would comprehend the word serenity and I would know peace.
Did you too find that serenity and peace of mind replaced the turmoil with a few drinks?
Oh, yeah. Next one, Donald.
Okay, sorry, I was finishing the text. Where are we at? We will comprehend,
No.
no matter?
Yep, when I had a few drinks, no matter.
Okay. So when I had a few drinks, no matter how far down the scale we have gone, I would see how our experience can benefit others.
How willing were you to share your life story with some poor drunk who had just really had a bad experience?
I love to talk about how bad my life was.
Absolutely. You're up, Paula.
Free loves company.
When that feeling of uselessness, when I had a few drinks, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity would disappear.
With a few drinks, did you feel that you just might really have a purpose in this world and feel sorry for those critters who didn't have what you had, although you just weren't too sure what it was that you had?
Almost every time. Donald?
When I had a few drinks, I would lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows.
Did a few drinks make you a little more interested in other people, especially of the opposite sex?
Can I buy you a drink, honey?
It's up to you, Paula.
When I had a few drinks, self-seeking slipped away.
Did a few drinks make you somewhat generous?
Drinks for everyone!
Gandalf?
And after I've had a few drinks, my whole attitude and outlook upon life would change.
Did a few drinks take you from a gray, gloomy day to one that was bright and hopeful?
From a shade of pink, or from a shade of brown to rosy pink with just a couple.
Paula?
When I had a few drinks, fear of people and of economic insecurity left me.
Did you enjoy being in the company of people sober?
Leave me alone!
Did a few drinks diminish your concern for your financial difficulties?
How am I gonna pay these bills? I think I better have a couple of drinks and figure it out.
Okay, well, whenever I had... Oh, ready?
Yeah, nope, you're right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. When I had a few drinks, I would intuitively know how to handle situations, which used to baffle me.
Did you two find that you were able to think much more clearly and wisely with a few drinks?
You bet. I had answers to questions that hadn't even been asked.
Boy, howdy. The unmanageability is clearly presented in the last sentence of that paragraph.
All right. When I had a few drinks, I suddenly realized that God was doing for me what I could not do for myself.
Perfect. From the article, Ways to Stop Drinking, you can get some ideas of how we apply the information Dr. Silkworth proposed.
The newcomer is also reminded that they need to be mindful of over-the-counter meds such as cough syrup, mouthwash, flavor extracts, etc., and that their healthcare providers should know that they are alcoholics so that the professionals will be mindful of what they do. We emphasize that they themselves are responsible for their sobriety, so be honest with those who have a need to know. We should also all be aware of supplements and the ingredients listed. Just because it says healthy doesn't mean it is safe for us. Some of the ingredients may trigger the craving. Some supplements do contain alcohol as a soluble base. No matter how long we have been sober, alcohol in any form can be deadly. It can be very easy to over-medicate when self-medicating.
We have now helped newcomers understand the problem. We may now breeze through Bill's story by looking at the events that describe the progression of alcoholism in his life. And let's turn to page 2. And Paula, let's go ahead and start with you. And it will be page 2, middle of the first paragraph, approximately 10 days down from the top of the page. One sentence, and it says, though my drinking was not.
Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife.
Lois is on his ass about his drinking. That was it, Paula. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
We're going to take you through a whole bunch of pages now.
And Gandalf, go into page 3, the bottom of the page, the last full sentence, and it starts with, I began.
I began to be jittery in the morning.
Bill was beginning to get jittery in the morning.
And Paula, let's go to page 5. You too, Gandalf, because you'll be there eventually. And we are going to start with the first sentence, starting with liquor ceased.
Liquor ceased to be a luxury, it became a necessity.
Perfect. Liquor ceased to be a luxury, it became a necessity. He's lying about his drinking, hiding his bottles, etc. I'm sorry, most of this is 1 or 2 sentence stuff. I should have been more specific.
And if it's more than 1 sentence, we will let you know. And Gandalf, jumping down to the 3rd paragraph, and you will get 4 sentences, and it will start with, then I got.
Okay, I'm lost.
Page
What page are we on?
Page 5, 3rd
Middle of the
paragraph.
3rd paragraph, then I got.
Then I got promising business opportunity. Stocks were at the low of 1932, and I had somehow formed a group to buy. I was to share generously in the profits. Then I went on a prodigious bender, and that chance vanished.
Thank you. Bill lost an opportunity to make some money because he drank.
And Paula, still page 5, 4th paragraph, 4 very short sentences.
I woke up. This had to be stopped. I saw I could not take so much as 1 drink. I was through forever.
Thank
Before
you.
then,
That's it right there. He made up his mind to never touch another drop. Boy, have any of us done that? I have.
And dropping down 1 more paragraph, Gandalf. You're going to start at shortly afterward, and you get 3 sentences.
Okay. Shortly afterward, I came home drunk. There had been no fight. Where had been my high resolve?
Bill returned home drunk.
And Paula, moving on to page 7, it will be the end of the first full paragraph, 1 sentence, beginning with best of all, ending with and mentally.
best of all, I met a kind doctor who explained that though certainly selfish and foolish, I had been seriously ill, bodily and mentally.
Perfect. Bill met Dr. Silkworth and learned what was wrong with him.
And Gandalf, turning to page 8. In the first full paragraph, the second sentence starts with quicksand, and you're going to read 4 sentences.
Okay. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master. You like that, huh?
Bill surrendered to the problem. Step 1.
Or as I like to say, I became alcohol's bitch. Paula, we use the next paragraph to exemplify the simplicity of our program. First sentence, please. Trembling, starting with trembling.
Trembling, I stepped from the hospital a broken man.
Very good. Now, the last sentence. I was to know happiness, and it ends with as time passes.
I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes.
I just saw that, Lisa. Thank you. You're right. It was coming. A wonderful life as a result of having taken the action Ebby prescribed for him.
Gandalf, pages 10 and 11. The last paragraph on page 10 and the first paragraph on page 11. So you're going to start with when they talked, and you're going to end at the rest I disregarded.
Okay. When they talked of a God personal to me, who was love, superhuman strength, and direction, I became irritated, and my mind snapped shut against such a theory. To Christ I conceded the certainty of a great man, not too closely followed by those who claimed him. His moral teaching, most excellent. For myself, I had adopted those parts, which seemed convenient and not too difficult. The rest I disregarded.
Bill's rebellion at the idea of a spiritual solution, identifying him as a hard-nosed agnostic.
And Paula, my friend, page 12, second paragraph. It will be 2 sentences, starting with my friend.
My friend suggested what then seemed a novel idea. He said, "Why don't you choose your own conception of God?"
Perfect. The freedom and responsibility we are given to develop an idea of God that we can begin to bet our lives on.
We then explain the simplicity of step 2 by the fact that Bill saw his old drinking buddy, who was supposedly in the nut house for alcoholic insanity, sober. Both of them had been powerless, but Ebby was sober and Bill was going to die. Ebby had found that power that Bill was unaware of. Ebby gave Bill hope, the beginning of coming to believe. From hope, Bill finally became willing to try Ebby's plan of action. Again, the idea of step 2.
And let's see, it was Paula last time. Gandalf, page 13. First paragraph, 1 sentence, starting with at the hospital.
At the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time.
Okay, listen, kids. This part's really, really significant. Everybody ready? It's a secret in Alcoholics Anonymous, and we don't tell it a whole lot. Entering Towns Hospital on December 11th, 1934, going into DTs. Taking step 3 on the 3rd day of his sobriety. Ebby visiting Bill in the hospital on the 4th and 5th days to help Bill take the action Ebby had learned to apply to his life, the result of which was a spiritual experience. Bill left the hospital on December 18th, 1934, at the end of 7 days, and lived 36 years without taking another drink. And we are here because of the action that Bill took, not the meetings he attended. You know why that's such a well-kept secret? Because thousands and thousands of people come to Alcoholics Anonymous and will never read this book. That's why it's such a well-kept secret. Just had to do that, sorry. I get to have fun with this meeting.
No. We now identify the meaning of step 1. Powerless because of the allergy, unmanageability due to the mind that cannot remember that we have the allergy. It can only remember the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks.
Relieving the feeling of restlessness, irritability, and discontentedness.
Therefore, we are powerless over our body and powerless over our mind where alcohol is concerned. In other words, we're screwed.
Absolutely. I think we're going to get them to read these next two. They're supposed to anyway. Paula, page 24, about the middle of the page, in italics, squiggly writing. You know, that squiggly writing in the second paragraph means if it's squiggly, it's important, folks. Would you read that paragraph, Paula, starting with the fact?
The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink.
Perfect.
And Gandalf, flipping all the way to page 43.
Hold on.
I'm holding.
Yeah, you mean you don't have that new book to where it just automatically falls open to those pages yet? We got to do some.
Using this.
We got to talk on the phone some more, brother.
43.
And when you get there, read the last paragraph in its entirety, starting it once more.
Once more, the alcoholic, at certain time, has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power.
And we want to thank Donald and Paula both for their willingness to be of service to the meeting, and thank you so much for your participation.
Absolutely. I had fun with it. I hope you guys did. So, and we will continue on. From the hope of hearing a recovered alcoholic tell their story of what they were like, what happened, and what they are like now, or reading the 44 personal stories in the Big Book, is the beginning of step 2. If lack of power is the problem, then a power greater than ourselves must be the solution. And we see that the recovered alcoholic has found that power. It takes no great mind to see that if lack of my power or powerlessness is my problem, then a power greater than myself must be the solution. Once I can see that, I am faced with a very simple decision. Am I or am I not willing to follow the clear-cut directions for recovery? But I need someone who knows how to do this, aka sponsorship.
So the simplicity of step 3 is to turn my will and my life over to the care of the God of my understanding. I learn how to turn my will and my life over to this power by taking steps 4 through 7. But I need someone, a sponsor, who has a working knowledge of taking the steps as directed in the Big Book, who can guide me through this process.
And while I'm thinking of it, Gemma, could you send me a private message in the chat with your address, and I will send your Big Book to you tomorrow? To determine if you have made a good choice in sponsors, it's really pretty easy to tell. If they suggest that you open your Big Book or offer to read with you from page XI and study to page 43, that is a good start in diagnosing step 1. These 51 pages will get you ready to see if you are ready to move on. Look at the first sentence on page 44.
In the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope we have made the distinction, or we hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic.
It tells us why it is so important to be thorough in your study to this point. From this study, we can separate the alcoholic from the non-alcoholic, which is so vital to the success of your group and to AA as a whole.
Now, take the test. If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely.
It's my turn. How many of you have promised you'd never drink again? It appears you failed to manage that decision. So, your life is unmanageable where alcohol is concerned.
Or, if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take.
How many of you cannot start drinking without getting drunk? It would appear that you too are powerless over alcohol. Step 1.
If that is the case, you may be suffering from an illness,
Chronic alcoholism of the hopeless variety.
which only a spiritual experience will conquer.
How many meetings must you attend to have a spiritual experience? Or how many steps must you take to have this blessed promise become a reality in your life?
Page 44 through 57 will open the door for you to be able to consider your own conception of the God of your understanding.
On page 58, let me start that again. Page 58 answers that stupid comment that we hear too often in meetings. I don't know how it works. The first sentence tells us how it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. In other words, we need to follow the clear-cut directions in the Big Book.
The program of Alcoholics Anonymous is a spiritual program. On page 59, we will find the first of several prayers. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. There are one or more prayers for each and every step from step 3 through step 12, which reminds us that the God of our understanding is the source of our recovery. We learn to invite him to be the solution to all our problems.
On page 62, we are told what our real problem is: selfishness and self-centeredness. But we can never see it without having some method of revealing the truth to us. So we make a decision to do precisely what our sponsor suggests and announce that decision in the prayer presented on page 63. This prayer is the invitation to God to come into our lives.
One of the beautiful things about the Big Book is that it will tell us when to take a step, how to take the step, what the results or promises of having taken the step will be, and provides us with the prayers that make certain we are inviting the God of our understanding to be very involved in our recovery.
The last sentence on page 63 tells us that now we have to get busy and take the rest of the steps.
Steps 4 and 5 are diagnostic steps to learn if what they told us on page 62,
selfishness and self-centeredness,
is true for us. The clear-cut directions for step 4 are found from pages 64 through 71, and there are 5 prayers for step 4.
On page 75, we find the clear-cut directions for step 5 and the 2 fifth step prayers.
On page 76, we will find the direction for step 6, which is nothing more than a commitment to God that we will become students and practitioners of the rest of the Big Book, and there we will find the 6th step prayer.
On page 76, we will find the 7th step prayer, which is to be prayed after we have done our part of steps 4 through 6. We now ask God to please do your part by making me different. This prayer is the completion of the prayer that we started on page 63. This is where we find the amen and finish the prayer. This is the cycle of 5 steps, which we started with the 3rd step prayer and ends with the 7th step prayer.
And also on page 76, we will be most pleased to learn that if we have carefully followed the directions in taking step 4, that step 8 is all but a done deal.
From page 76 to page 83 are the directions for taking step 9 and 4, 9th step prayers are there.
Having carefully followed the path the first 100 laid down for us, we now have had a spiritual awakening or experience and have joined the first 100 as recovered alcoholics. The 9-step promises describe that blessed event.
On page 64, we take the first action to recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. By the time we get to page 83, we have recovered. We have joined the first 100. We have been given the power that we lack to survive alcoholism. Carefully following the clear-cut directions outlined in just, here's another secret, 20 pages of our basic text produces that miracle of recovery.
We are now to start our spiritual growth, and that occurs in steps 10, 11, and 12.
The clear-cut directions for step 10 are contained in the paragraph on page 84, beginning with, this thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory.
A running start for learning how to communicate with the God of your understanding is very adequately covered on pages 86, 87, and 88.
Doji, stop it. And now that we have received the power, it is our primary job to pass on to the next newcomer God puts in our life. The clear-cut directions for sponsorship are contained in chapter 7, but you won't find the 12-step prayer until you have reached the last page of our basic text, our 12-step prayer. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick.
So there you have it. So utterly simple, yet so garbled in our meetings. I challenge you to be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. The simplest guide that I follow in working with others is, if it isn't in the big book, they don't need to be exposed to it.
Yeah. Oh God, this is one of my favorite parts. If you are encouraged to wait until you have a better understanding of what our program is about, I have one question for you. How well did you like sex before you tried it? Well, you won't know a damn thing about recovery either until you have taken the action of taking the steps precisely as they were given to us. Thank you, folks. That is what a Foundations meeting is. A journey through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and some hot spots in our book. And we encourage you to come back every other month. Next month, the first Monday, will be our 4th step workshop, which is very visual. And then April, we will be doing this again. But it just gives us some great resources, not only for our personal lives, but in working with others. And now, the floor is open to questions, observations, experience, spiritual experience, working with others. Whatever you want to say or ask is just fine with us, so welcome. And don't be shy. You can just unmute and bounce on in. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi. What meeting? I love this. I'd love to do it again, but I don't know how to find it, like on the meeting guide.
It's not on the meeting guide. It is on our website. But did you take my number down earlier? Because
Yes.
because I'm in the PI and CPC. I'm treasurer for CPC, and I'm the Zoom guy for and Trish just put it in the chat as well. In fact, she's in the middle of posting all of our meetings right now. I can see that look on her face. But if you'll send me a text, I'll keep you updated on all the meetings.
Where did you all get some of the information? Like going back towards the beginning, you were saying some of the stuff like when the recovery rate went down,
Mm-hmm.
when they stopped. I guess I'm paraphrasing, but when they stopped making the meetings more about the literature, the recovery rate went down. That was extremely interesting.
It did. So much of this is historical fact, right?
Okay, from like the literature books, Dr. Bob and...
Well, for some of it through natural observation and watching decline in attendance, relapses come in, and so forth. So I will give you an example, and here's the part that you are talking about. Bill published here. Let me just screen share it so you can see it as well. You will be able to see. You will be able to see what we see, and of course this is something that has been passed on to us, and we provide information. So then Bill published the 12 and 12 in 1953, and by 1965 our success rate had dropped to 50%. Unfortunately, and this is true especially in the Northeast, many newcomers are encouraged to try to use the 12 and 12 as their source of directions. Bill W. was the principal author of the Big Book and the sole author of the 12 and 12. On page 17 of the 12 and 12, Bill stated, "The Book of Alcoholics Anonymous became the basic text of the fellowship and still is. This present volume, talking about the 12 and 12, proposes to broaden and deepen understanding of the 12 steps as first written by the earlier work. By saying this, Bill indicates that the directions for the 12 steps are only in the Big Book and not the 12 and 12. And I'm going to come back to that in a second, but we'll go on with the progression. Then, in the late 60s, we started discussion participation meetings that failed to stick with our singleness of purpose, so that by 1980, we dropped to 33%. The result of which is we started ignoring the practice of focusing on our spiritual solution, and we drifted into group therapy. For recent years, our success rate has decreased to what appears to be less than 5% for those finding as much as 5 years of sobriety. I think this next line is also very important. While there has been dramatic change in our fellowship, the program has remained unchanged. Consequently, the fourth edition reads the same as the first edition. So let me see if I can break this up a little bit for you. So the 12 and 12, as it's stated, which I got one right here somewhere. 12 steps and 12 traditions. So in 1950, at the first General Service Conference, the traditions were introduced, and they were passed and adopted for the fellowship. Johnny B., good to see you, my brother. And the thing is, Bill could not have written a book called 12 Traditions and sold it. Nobody was really interested in the traditions. So he wrote 12 steps and 12 traditions. And while the directions aren't in the 12 and 12, the 12 and 12 is Bill's personal experience taking the steps, working with others, taking others through the steps. And as you go through the steps in the 12 and 12, what we get is we get a whole lot of psychological stuff and you know what some of our alcoholic behaviors are and so on. That's all perfectly fine. That's all perfectly fine. Because how many of us have ever said, but why do I do this every time? Right? So it shows us what some of our behaviors are. But the directions for actually taking the steps are not in the 12 and 12. They are only in the big book. And there again, and I'll give you an example of that. Chapter 5, how it works in our book. While it presents the 12 steps in the beginning, right? Rarely have we seen a person fail through to the ABCs. Chapter 5 tells us how to do two things and how to do two things only. How to take steps 3 and 4. It gives us the prayers we use, the actions we take, shows us the promises that will result from saying the prayers and taking the actions. The next chapter, Into Action, which is 16 short pages, takes us through the next 7 steps. How many times have you ever been in a meeting and people say, I don't want to read that book, it's too big, it's too thick. Yet 16 short pages give me the directions of how to take steps 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. That's pretty amazing. And all of that is focusing on our singleness of purpose. So the other thing is, and this is the whole thing about not focusing on our primary purpose of recovery. Has anybody here besides me ever been to the My Cat Died meeting? I have been to many meetings where somebody talks about how their cat died, and the next 14 people talk about how their cat died, right? And it's got nothing to do with staying sober, taking steps, helping a newcomer, or any of that. It becomes, I hate to say it, it becomes the pity party over how my cat died. Now, I will agree, oftentimes that is what our experience, strength, and hope is. But I'm one of those, I was taught not to be a table dumper. I personally was taught that if I talk about what my problems are in Alcoholics Anonymous and in life in general, I need to bring the solution along with it of how I got through it and how I have recovered. Now, some of these numbers also, so in the 60s is about the time, thank you Lisa, glad you made it, about the time in the 60s is also when treatment centers came along, and there was a political movement, and I forget what they called it. I want to say it was the Thompson Act or something like that. And treatment could then bill insurance companies. So treatment has turned into business, but it's not Alcoholics Anonymous, is it? And if you go through a treatment center, a good treatment center, when they cut you loose, they should say, now go to Alcoholics Anonymous, get a sponsor, get a big book, and get recovered. But that doesn't happen so much anymore, especially in today's world. In today's world, they often have a tendency to say, well, it's okay if you don't make it. You just come right on back here, and we'll do it all over again, which is true. You know, gosh, I have never known anyone to love people who don't make it more than a group of alcoholics, because we always welcome everybody back. You can be our group treasurer, steal our money, go out and get drunk on it, and we will still love you back when you come back. So, does that help explain some of that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You are welcome. Anything else? Any other questions, thoughts, observations? Poke the pickle. Get a stick and poke the pickle.
All right. I'm going to go back to page 84. Donald Alcoholic, Gandalf Alcoholic, Gandalf the Red Pickle. And, when I first found alcohol and stuff, like it says in the last line of the first paragraph, what I realized, that I would suddenly realize that alcohol was doing for me what I could not do for myself. And, it gave me guts, it gave me glory. Well, it gave me, the delusion of all that stuff. But, yeah. But the promises do come true.
They do.
I just read, or I saw a thing on Facebook, one of the reels, this guy was guaranteeing, success rate for alcohol recovery. And he was saying that Alcoholics Anonymous does not work. That's true. It doesn't work. You have to work it for it to work. And if you don't work it, it's not going to do nothing. It's just going to be, this book right here is just going to be a bookend. It's just going to be a dust collector unless you use it. And it's sad that, our statistics are down. But for the people who want it, look how many successes we do have. So don't be discouraged about the statistics, because for the people who want to get sober, it does work. And for that, I will be here willing to help somebody who wants it. I do have a sponsee that's just a dry drunk right now because he's always got some reason, something going on in his head that he just, doesn't want to do the work. I said, okay, that's your prerogative, but I can't help you unless you want to be helped. I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make him drink. So, that's what we do and stuff. And sometimes it's disheartening whenever, hey, the help is there. We know the way to do it. We know how to do it. You just have to want it. So, that's all I got for this.
Thank you, brother. So here's why it does work. And I don't know how much time everybody has, but I do know this. Between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, did I count me? Yeah. Between 6 of us, there's 90 years of sobriety sitting here. So I know it works. And the thing that I love about it is and you're absolutely right, Alcoholics Anonymous isn't for a program for people who want it, not even a program for people who need it. It is a program for people who will do it. And that is absolute truth. Trish, can you take over for a minute? Thank you.
Any other questions or comments anybody wants to throw in?
So Trish, this is Paula. I have an observation. When Jamie was reading about the 12 and 12, and that being particularly prominent here in the Northeast, and how in the early 80s our membership declined, or it became more of a therapy group as opposed to an AA group. So my particular persuasion through this process was the Hyannis Big Book Step Study method. And that started in 1981 in Hyannis, Massachusetts. And so I came by that I had 12 years sobriety when I found that particular method of doing the 4th, 5th step, and 5th step, essentially 4 through 9. And it was very helpful. But, Jamie's comment about being the 12 and 12, so the other way that seems pretty prevalent here in the Northeast is what's called AWOL. It's a way of life, and that's the, people doing the steps out of the 12 and 12. And I'm happy that I didn't start that way. I'm happy that I started with clear-cut directions. And I just want to say, for everybody who's still on this meeting, the process is absolutely extraordinary. It's given me a freedom and a life beyond my wildest dreams. not perfect like everybody else. Life happens, but I have ways and people to help me with through life now as a result of doing these steps. It's just an extraordinary experience, and I guess that was my only observation about what Jamie read, which I think came from the 12 and 12, Jamie?
Mm-hmm.
Was that where that came from?
Yes.
You were reading? Okay.
And that's a good point, Paula. I'm Trish and I'm an alcoholic. And, I got sober, not quite as far north. I got sober in New Jersey. And the first person I asked to be my sponsor, she couldn't with good reason. And I understood her reason. But her comment to me was, get the 12 and 12 and read step 1 every day for 30 days. Or someone else tells you to stop. And if I followed that direction, at 30-something years sober, I would still be reading the first step every day out of the 12 and 12 and nothing else.
Yeah.
Because I was never, when I did get a sponsor up there, when I did settle with someone, I got a home group, I got active, I never got directed into the book. Other than what we read in meetings or going to a book where we read around the room, but never really went through the book with one person, with a small group, didn't know what was in the book, other than what other people told me were in the book. And then once I finally started getting into the book and reading it on my own, asking for direction, reading it with someone who had been in the book before and knew what was in the book, where to direct me, where to compare. Hey, this is said on this page, but it's also on this page and this page and this page. That's when my recovery really started taking off, because I was doing so much more and learning so much more that I could have, but just wasn't around. And I'm not saying the people around me didn't know what they were doing. And there had to have been something I was doing, because I stayed sober. There was a lot of drive time in there, but I wasn't drinking. But I was sober more on service than on steps. And when I reached points in my life where things got rocky, I didn't have the foundation of as good of a foundation on the steps as I could have had to fall back on. So what I fell back on was isolation, which is never a good choice. Thank God I didn't drink, and I ended up finding other meetings to go to. But until I got down in Maryland and then started finding people on Zoom, I never really got into the book.
Zoom. I'm being a wise guy here, Trish. I'm sorry. You know how much I love you. Paula, you're absolutely right about something. And that is true about AWOLs. And I know up in that area, but I have heard of other AWOLs as well. They use this, the little red book. Okay? And while the little red book has great information in it, it still doesn't have the same instruction for taking the steps that the big book has. I've also heard that of a couple of meetings that, and I can't find my copy of it, but it's here somewhere, I promise, because like this whole thing is nothing. Let's see. That whole thing, both sides, is nothing but recovery-related books. But that there are AWOL groups that try to use Living Sober as a source as well.
Oh.
And see, Living Sober, which was written in 2 years after Bill passed, was really a book for newcomers, written by newcomers. Right? They did it. There are many things in it that don't align with the big book, and I don't mean that as a criticism. I mean that more in line of staying true to what the spiritual message in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is. I know many people are going to be encouraged to use this, and this just came out. This has just been published. There's been a big fight over this for the last 5 years, the plain language big book. And it's got some of the original stuff out of our big book in it, and so on. And to be fair, I bought it because I don't want to be the guy who suffers from contempt prior to investigation. And it will be somebody's book, and it will be somebody's book of recovery. But I can tell you this, I can't take a newcomer through that. I can only take them through the big book. Because that's where I have learned the program of recovery and the program of action. The other thing is, just from the few things that I have read in here, I can see where our big book shows me that I'm powerless and I need to find that power greater than myself. So far what I've found in this is they've demoted God. And God is more of my girl Friday and an assistant rather than being my source. And I, especially after so many years of being sober, I always want God to be my source. You know, when I'm working with a newcomer, besides that 51 pages we talked about of the doctor's opinion and the first 43 to answer that step 1 question, a couple of pages later, my goal is to get them to page 45, where it talks about lack of power. That was our dilemma, and we had to find a power by which we could live. Just where and how were we to find this power? That's what this book is exactly written about.